Anniversaries are supposed to be moments of celebration, milestones that remind two people why they chose each other in the first place. They are days filled with flowers, candlelight, and memories, not the sound of a suitcase zipper and the heavy silence of a marriage on the edge of collapse. But on our 10th anniversary, instead of clinking glasses of wine and reminiscing about our first date, I found myself watching my wife standing in the living room with her bags packed. Her eyes were cold, her voice firm. "I'm done," she said. At first, I thought it was a cruel joke. Maybe she was trying to get back at me for forgetting the flowers, or maybe she was angry because I had been working too much. But as I looked at her trembling hands gripping the handle of her suitcase, I knew this wasn't a joke. Something inside her had broken long before that day, and I hadn't noticed. The cracks we ignore. Looking back, I can't say there weren't signs. The late-night silences at dinner, the way she avoided holding my hand in public, how she smiled less and sighed more. At first, I told myself it was stress, work deadlines, family issues, or maybe just the natural wear and tear of life. But the truth was more brutal. I had stopped paying attention. When we first got married, I remembered how carefully I listened to her. I remembered writing her notes, bringing her favorite coffee, and staying up late just to talk about dreams and silly ideas. But over the years, I grew comfortable. Too comfortable. I assumed she would always be there, that marriage was unshakable once you said I do. What I didn't realize was that love is not a monument carved in stone. It's a garden. And if you don't water it, if you stop tending to it, it wilts silently, slowly, until one day you wake up and realize the person you love has emotionally left long before they physically do. The anniversary that changed everything. That morning, I had woken up excited, even a little proud of myself. I had booked a dinner reservation at the same restaurant where we had our first date. I had even bought her a necklace, a small, delicate piece of jewelry that I thought would remind her of our younger years. But when I came home from work, I didn't find her dressed for dinner. I didn't find her waiting with a smile or even anger. Instead, I found her suitcase. "I can't do this anymore," she said, her voice breaking slightly, though she tried to stay strong. "I've given so much of myself, and I feel like I'm invisible. I don't want to fight anymore. I don't want to beg for your attention. I'm tired." Her words cut deeper than any argument we'd ever had. I tried to protest. I told her we were fine, that couples go through ups and downs. I reminded her of the necklace, the reservation, the plans I had made. But to her, those gestures were too little, too late. She picked up her bags and walked toward the door. The twist, she didn't leave. And then, in a moment I will never forget, she stopped. Her hand was on the doorknob, but she froze. For what felt like hours, she stood there in silence. I could see her shoulders trembling. She turned slightly, her eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to leave you," she whispered. "But I can't keep living like this." That was the moment I realized she hadn't just packed her bags to leave me. She had packed her bags to test if I was willing to fight for her, for us. I dropped everything, my pride, my excuses, my defenses. I walked over, gently took her suitcase from her hands, and set it down. Then I said something I hadn't said in a long time. "I'm sorry. I haven't been the husband you needed. But I want to be. Please, don't give up on us." For the first time in months, maybe years, she broke down and cried in my arms. The road back. That night, instead of dinner at a fancy restaurant, we sat on the living room floor with takeout pizza. We talked for hours, not about bills or schedules, but about us. About how she felt unseen, about how I felt overwhelmed but didn't know how to express it, about how we had let life get in the way of love. It wasn't easy. Words alone couldn't fix years of neglect. But that night was the turning point. It was the moment we both realized that love doesn't survive on autopilot, it requires effort, vulnerability, and a willingness to keep choosing each other, even when it's hard. Lessons learned. If you've made it this far into my story, maybe you're in a relationship that feels like it's slipping away. Maybe you've noticed the cracks but told yourself it's just a phase. Let me tell you, don't wait until the suitcase appears at the door. Don't wait until the person you love is whispering "I'm done." Love isn't about grand gestures once a year on anniversaries. It's about the small things, the daily effort, the listening, the reminders that you still see and value your partner. My wife didn't leave that night. But she could have. And if she had, I would have lost the best part of my life because of my own blindness. Now, years later, I still think about that suitcase. It reminds me that marriage is fragile, but also that it can be rebuilt if both people are willing to fight for it. Every anniversary since then has been a reminder not of the night she almost left, but of the night we chose to stay. Broken Heart Deception Diaries takeaway: sometimes the scariest words in a marriage are not "I love you" or "I hate you." They're "I'm done." But if you're lucky, sometimes "I'm done" doesn't mean the end. Sometimes, it's a desperate cry for change, and a second chance waiting to be claimed. Anniversaries are supposed to be days of love, joy, and reflection, days that remind two people of the promises they once made and the journey they have taken together. But for me, our 10th anniversary became the night I nearly lost everything. My wife had her suitcase packed. She stood in our living room with tears in her eyes, her voice trembling but firm as she said the words I thought I'd never hear. "I'm done." Flashback: the early days. We met in college. I was clumsy, broke, and uncertain about my future, while she was full of life, her laughter filling every room she entered. She wasn't just beautiful, she was magnetic. She had dreams, ambitions, and a heart so full of kindness it overwhelmed me. I remember our first date. I was so nervous I spilled water on the table, but she laughed it off. That night, as we walked home under the streetlights, she slipped her hand into mine. It was such a small gesture, but it made me feel like I belonged somewhere, like I had finally found home. When I proposed to her 3 years later, she cried, not because the ring was expensive, it wasn't, but because she believed in us. She believed that together we could weather anything. Our wedding was simple, filled with family, laughter, and promises of forever. And for a while, life felt like a dream. The slow drift. But somewhere along the way, forever began to feel routine. Bills piled up. Work consumed me. Responsibilities multiplied. I convinced myself that working late and chasing promotions was my way of loving her, by providing, by building a future. But what she needed wasn't just money in the bank or a roof over her head. She needed my time, my attention, my heart. I began to notice the little changes but brushed them aside. She stopped waiting up for me at night. She stopped leaving little notes in my lunch. She started scrolling on her phone more often, her laughter quieter, her eyes distant. One night, I came home late from work, and she was sitting on the couch with her arms crossed. She asked me if I even noticed her anymore. I dismissed it, telling her she was overthinking. I regret that moment more than anything. Because that night, she stopped asking for my attention. And when someone stops asking, it means they've already given up inside. The breaking point. By the time our 10th anniversary arrived, I thought everything was fine. I had booked a nice dinner. I had bought her a necklace. I thought I was being thoughtful. But when I walked in, there was no anticipation, no smile, no warmth. Just her suitcase. "I can't do this anymore," she said. "I've tried to hold this marriage together, but I feel like I'm the only one fighting. I feel invisible. I feel like I don't matter to you anymore." Her words shattered me. I tried to argue, to defend myself. I told her I was working hard for us. But she shook her head. "You've been working for everything else but us. You stopped seeing me a long time ago." She reached for the suitcase, ready to leave. The twist. And then, she stopped at the door. Her hand lingered on the knob, but she didn't turn it. She stood there, shoulders shaking, tears spilling silently. I realized she didn't want to leave, she wanted to be heard. She wanted to be fought for. I walked to her, took the suitcase from her hand, and whispered, "Please don't go. I don't want to lose you. I'm sorry for not being the man you needed me to be. I want to do better. I want to love you the way you deserve. Please, give me another chance." For the first time in months, she looked at me not with anger, not with disappointment, but with raw, aching vulnerability. And then she collapsed into my arms, crying harder than I'd ever seen. The road back. That night, instead of dining in a fancy restaurant, we sat cross-legged on the floor eating cold pizza. We talked, really talked, for the first time in years. She told me how lonely she felt, how she had cried herself to sleep on nights I wasn't there, how she had considered leaving 100 times before but always held on because she believed in us. I admitted my failures, my arrogance in thinking love could survive without effort, my blindness to her needs, my inability to prioritize what truly mattered. We promised each other something that night. No more silence, no more autopilot, no more neglect. If we were going to save our marriage, it would take work every single day. Rebuilding. The weeks after weren't magical. They were hard. There were awkward conversations, lingering resentments, and moments when we both wondered if we had waited too long to fix things. But slowly, we rebuilt. I started coming home early, not just once in a while, but regularly. We made time for walks, for coffee dates, for just sitting on the couch and holding hands without distractions. I listened more. I looked at her, really looked at her, the way I used to when we first fell in love. And she, in turn, softened. She smiled more, laughed more, began leaving those little notes again. The house felt warm again, alive again. The anniversary that changed us forever. Now, every anniversary, we don't just celebrate love, we celebrate survival. We celebrate the night she almost left but didn't, the night we chose each other again, the night we learned that love isn't something you feel every day, it's something you choose every day. Because the truth is, marriage isn't about never fighting, never hurting, or never struggling. It's about fighting through the hurt, choosing to stay even when leaving feels easier, and remembering that love is built not in the grand moments, but in the small, everyday choices. Final thoughts. When I look at her now, I see the same woman I fell in love with, but I also see more. I see strength. I see patience. I see someone who was brave enough to almost walk away, not because she stopped loving me, but because she loved herself enough to demand more. And I'm grateful she didn't leave. Because that night, I learned the most important lesson of my life: never take love for granted. Broken Heart Deception Diaries Moral: sometimes I'm done doesn't mean the end. Sometimes, it's a plea, a desperate cry for change. And if you're willing to listen, to fight, and to rebuild, you might just find that the end can become a new beginning.